Okay, as soon as I finish chewing my candy, we're going to talk about absolute value. And absolute value is a very subtle idea. Now, when I was in 9th grade, they told me the absolute value of Q means makes it positive. If Q is negative, it's positive. And if it's positive, you leave it alone. But it can also be a piecewise function, right, as Q, if Q is greater than or equal to 0, excuse me, or we can write it as negative Q if Q is less than 0. So what this means, it doesn't mean that a absolute value of Q can be negative. It means that if it is negative, then it is negative Q, which would be or negative the negative number, which would make it positive. So in a sense, what this piecewise function tells you is that Q is made positive all the time. Okay? In this one, you can also write it as the square root of Q squared. Another way to write it. Okay, so there's several different ways to write it. And what I'd like to talk about this time is the absolute value in terms of a distance between two numbers. And what I'm going to go over here, and we're going to create an algorithm for the distance between two numbers. I'm going to say distance, I'm going to make an ordered pair, like maybe 2 and 6. I want to know the distance between 2 and 6 on the number line. Okay? Of course, I could count it, but that would be cheating. So what I want to do is say, okay, why don't I just say you take the larger number and you subtract the smaller number and you get 4, and that's the distance between 2 and 6. Well, that sounds like a good idea. And if I'm at 2, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. By gosh, it is 4 units away. So that works. I wonder if it works if you have some negative numbers in there. So I'm going to go, how about negative 2 and 5? The distance between negative 2 and 5. Well, 5 is to the right of negative 2 on the number line, so we consider that 5 is the larger number. And we go 5 minus negative 2. And that gives me, of course, that's positive 2, right? That gives me 7. Well, I go over here to negative 2, and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it's true. The thing that actually works really nice. Now let's check it out to see if it works for two negative numbers. For instance, what about the distance between, say, negative 1 and negative 6? Okay, negative 1 and negative 6. Well, which is the larger one? Negative 1 is to the right of negative 6. So we consider that negative 1 is the larger. So I'm going to take negative 1, and I'm going to subtract negative 6 from negative 1. Of course, this is positive 6 minus 1. This equals 5. So where are we? We're at, well, I can start at negative 1 and just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, they're 5 units apart. Doesn't matter which way you count. So that's right, they are 5 units apart. So we've discovered a nice little algorithm for finding the distance between two numbers. You take the larger number and you subtract the smaller number from it. It doesn't matter whether they're both positive, one's negative, one's positive, or both are negative, it works fine. Now, what doesn't work, though, if I were looking for the distance between, say, negative 2 and 5, if I accidentally put the smaller number first and subtract the larger number from it, that's a danger. In other words, I have to do some thinking to use this, and I ended up with negative 7. Well, look at that. It's the same thing, except this one's negative and this one's positive. So except for a sign, it doesn't really matter whether you subtract the larger one from the smaller one or the smaller one from the larger one. And so if that's true, then a way to get around this whole thing is I can say the distance between A and B, and I don't care which is bigger, right, is A minus B, but I might get a negative, so I put a absolute value on it. And what this says to me is this is the distance between A and B. The absolute value of A minus B is the distance between the two numbers, okay? And we might look at some other examples. Let me get an eraser here. I don't see one. Offhand, throw me one. Thank you. What happens if you have A plus B? Is that a distance as well? A plus B? Well, yeah, it is a distance because this really equals A minus negative B. So when we have A plus B, it's the distance between A and negative B. And then another variation on that, what happens if we have the absolute value of just A? Is that a distance? Yeah, it's the distance between A and 0. Okay? The idea that you can say the distance, indicate the distance between two numbers as a minus b, absolute value, doesn't matter which is bigger, is used a lot in calculus. We use this a lot when we do the definition of the limit.